Welcome back, everybody, to Niners Now. I'm your host, Brady Grustas, at Grustas Brady on X. You can follow me there. And today we're going to talk about the Brian Robinson Jr. trade, as well as recapping the 49ers' 30-23 win versus the Chargers on Saturday. And of course, stick around until later in the show when I'll be going over my final official 53-man roster predictions before Tuesday's roster deadline. But of course, before we begin, go ahead and subscribe down below, leave a like, leave a comment, and let's get into it. Now, on Friday, the 49ers made yet another trade, bringing in former Commanders running back Brian Robinson Jr. Now, Robinson's a guy who we've actually talked about on the show before because he was a very likely candidate to be traded from Washington, but I didn't anticipate that the Niners would be the team to land him. I do like this trade, though. The Niners are sending out a 6th-round pick in next year's draft to acquire Robinson, who will be the primary backup running back this year. If anything were to happen to Christian McCaffrey, I trust Brian Robinson Jr. more than I trust Isaac Guerendo or Jordan James to take over. And it seems like Shanahan does too, as he said on Saturday that Robinson will be the number 2 back this year. Robinson's had almost 800 yards with multiple touchdowns in all 3 years of his career. He's easily the most experienced backup we have, and he fills a need. Robinson's a big running back who's extremely good in short yardage situations. According to ESPN's Nick Wagoner, Robinson was top 3 in the league in 3rd and 4th and short, meaning 3 or fewer yards to go. In those situations, Robinson had 7.8 yards per carry. Averaging 7.8 yards per carry when there's 3 or fewer yards to go for a first down, that's phenomenal. That's extremely efficient. And it felt like the Niners really struggled in that area last year. When they needed 3 yards, they couldn't get it. We may see Robinson get some goal line work as well because the Niners' red zone offense wasn't any good last year either. Robinson's also a capable receiving back, and he's a pretty decent pass blocker. He doesn't have like the long speed that you would hope for, but he's quick, and he can do all those other things that I just mentioned. I think he's a really solid addition, and we may even get a compensatory pick if he plays well enough to get a big contract next offseason. Now, the preseason is officially over. Congratulations, everybody. We made it. The Niners won their final preseason game 30-23, ending their preseason with a record of 2-1, and they really ran away with this one in the second half. It was nice to see the Niners' depth outplaying the opponent's depth in this one, despite the sloppy play from both teams. Over 20 penalties in this game. It was ugly at certain parts. Even though nearly all the starters were resting, we got to see some injured 49ers make their returns on Saturday. Renardo Green, Isaac Guerendo, Jordan Elliott, and Sam Aquanu all made their preseason debuts after being out with some injuries during training camp. And there were certainly plenty of standouts, but let's go ahead and start off with the offense. Now, Carter Bradley and Tanner Mordecai at quarterback were both troopers on Saturday. They were shuffling in and out of the lineup as both of them dealt with some minor injuries in this game. I think Mordecai clearly outplayed Bradley, but Bradley had some very nice throws as well in this one. There's a lot of discussion online about Bradley being a Nepo baby, but I honestly thought this wasn't that bad of a game from him. That Denver game was way worse. Mordecai just happened to have his best game as a 49er, so the Bradley performance looks a little bit worse in comparison. And by the way, Mordecai was not perfect either. He was just quite good. Regardless, this was a promising performance from both quarterbacks, and it's good to know that there's multiple young QBs who can impress in this scheme that are still developing. Isaac Guerendo at running back didn't look 100% out there on Saturday. Seems like that shoulder's still bothering him. But Jeff Wilson had a nice day. He broke quite a few tackles and scored a touchdown while picking up blitzes beautifully. I'd love to see Wilson end up on the practice squad of this team. Guerendo's stock is unfortunately way down after the Brian Robinson Jr. trade, but if he can get healthy and stay healthy, I'm still a believer. Sky Moore, the newest wide receiver, wasn't great in the pass game in this game. He had a couple of catches, but nothing especially exciting. But he was clearly the best returner on the team. It seems to me like he'll probably have the return jobs to start the year, especially because Junior Bergen muffed a punt. There were a lot of muffed punts in this game, but as a 7th rounder who would only be making the team as a returner, Bergen really didn't have any room for error. So unfortunately, I think he's not going to make the team. But of course, stick around until our next segment to find out exactly who I think will be making the team at wide receiver. On the offensive line, I think Matt Hennessy was really getting work today. I'm not sure the Niners have a backup center. Nick Zakelj wasn't great either. Both Connor Colby and Drew Moss I thought were impressive, but neither of them play center. Those are two guards. So the backup for the 49ers offensive line has been one of the major roster stories all summer long, and I could still seeing it go a bunch of different ways. Now, the defense had a bunch of standout performers, and for this segment, I want to talk about the PFF highest graded players on the defense because I think these guys all really stood out to me. The highest graded 49ers defender was Trevis Gipson, who got a 90.5 grade, which is elite. And it showed. Gipson was beating his man so consistently all game long. I think he's clearly overtaken Robert Beal Jr., and he should absolutely be this team's fifth edge rusher if they decide to keep one. It felt like Gipson was constantly pressuring the quarterback. He had a sack on DJU, which was unfortunately taken away by a defensive penalty. He also had an awesome play in the run game where the Chargers ran a toss to his side. He disengaged from his blocker and chased down the running back for a loss. It was so impressive. He looked really fast. Now, speaking of fast, the second highest grade was my biggest standout from this game, rookie linebacker Nick Martin. I think every Niners linebacker that played on Saturday had multiple really nice plays. That's definitely the deepest position group on the team. But I don't think that there's a single player that has improved more from the Broncos game until right now than Nick Martin. Martin was great on Saturday. He didn't miss a single tackle. He was flying to the ball all game long, and he was laying the hit stick. There was one play I noticed where he did overrun a run fit, and the running back was able to get by him. But genuinely, I don't think he made another mistake for the rest of the game. He was a demon in the flats, constantly wrapping up in space, popping the tight ends and running backs. He forced a fumble with a textbook hit on Raheem Sanders, the running back for the Chargers. He disengaged from the block. The guard was trying to block him. He disengaged from that, and he laid his shoulder right on the football, popping it out while Evan Anderson recovered it. This is also pretty notable because one of the biggest issues from Martin's game was what does he do when there's a blocker right in his face? Is he going to be able to disengage, or will he just get washed out by pulling or climbing blockers? And on this play, he showed a great ability to get to the hole, make the tackle, and of course force the fumble as well. Martin also had a really nice play on special teams. He shot through the coverage for a perfect tackle on a kick return. It was awesome. You could hear the pads pop as he hit the returner. Martin was overall just fantastic on Saturday, and I'm super excited for what he may be able to do going forward. Jordan Elliott was also awesome in the first couple of drives Saturday night. He was one of PFF's top-graded defenders. He was disruptive as a pass rusher and a nice penetrator in the run game. The defensive tackles as a whole were great and much improved in this game, but Elliott especially looked like a man amongst boys early on. I've had my issues with Elliott. I don't think he was great for this team last year, but if he can play this well in the regular season, I think the Niners should be at least all right in the run game. Alfred Collins, Sebastian Valdez, Evan Anderson, and Bruce Hector were all also very solid performers as well at defensive tackle. Valdez combined with Nick Martin for a phenomenal run stop on 3rd and 1. Martin saw that there was a fullback lead blocking for the running back on 3rd and 1. Martin flies in, blows up the fullback, stands up the running back, and it looks for a second like the running back might be about to fall forward, but Martin is holding strong, and then Valdez from the backside comes out of nowhere, grabs the running back, wrestles him backwards, and forces the stop. Unfortunately, the Chargers did get the 4th and 1 conversion, but that was an awesome play by the two rookies. And now, of course, we got to talk about Jake Moody. Moody had yet another up and down day. He missed the first kick of the day, which was an extra point, and he kicked a kickoff right out of bounds, giving the Chargers the ball at the 40-yard line. Now, Moody didn't miss a kick the rest of the day, but you cannot make boneheaded mistakes like that as a kicker. You just cannot do it. I don't care about what Moody can do. I care about what he does do. And what he does do is miss. He misses extra points. He misses field goals. He misses kickoffs. The Jake Moody experiment, it's just too much distraction. If this is going to be a serious playoff football team, then Jake Moody can't be the kicker. There is not enough room for error here. You can't have an inconsistency at that position. You just can't do it. Find another kicker. So those are my takeaways from the Chargers game on Saturday. What did you think? Who stood out to you? Leave your thoughts below down in the comments. Now that we are one day away from the 53-man roster cut down day, it's time to go over my official predictions for the 53-man roster. Now keep in mind, this may not be what the roster looks like on Tuesday. Usually how these cut down periods work is that the initial roster is revealed Tuesday, with some injured players still included and some roster juggling still yet to be done. Tuesday is more about what players do we think we can sneak through waivers, and Wednesday, after the waiver period ends, is when rosters are usually completed with some additional moves being made. So keep an eye out for some moves on Tuesday and then also on Wednesday. My list today is meant to guess how this roster will look on Wednesday, so keep that in mind. Let's start with the quarterbacks. Just like last time, I have just Brock and Mac Jones making this roster. Curtis Rourke probably ends up on season-ending injured reserve, which means that Carter Bradley and Tanner Mordecai both end up cut. I think Bradley's pretty clearly earned the practice squad quarterback position, but he's definitely not played well enough to make the 53-man roster. And I guess if you like Mordecai, you can bring him in on the practice squad as well, but I don't know. I'm not fully sold on Mordecai. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback, despite him playing great in Saturday's game. And I think you have to only keep two quarterbacks on this roster. There's just too many other players that should make this team. 53 sounds like a lot of players, but when you really start crunching the numbers, it's tough to keep an unproven quarterback if you didn't just spend a draft pick on him. At running back, I'm going to keep Christian McCaffrey, Brian Robinson Jr., Isaac Guerendo, and Jordan James. That's a very easy top four, very cut and dry, and of course throw in Kyle Juszczyk at fullback as well. I think bringing in Brian Robinson Jr. made a lot of things fall nicely into place for this running back room. I think there's a small chance that either Guerendo or James end up on short-term IR, but it's probably more likely that they just make the team and the team just waits for them to get healthy. This room had a lot more question marks before the Niners brought in Robinson. He really rounds out the roster, and he gives the Niners one of the best running back rooms in the NFL. It might be the best, if we're being honest. I mean, think about Philly's room. It's not as deep as the Niners. I'd say the Niners is deeper, and I'll still take McCaffrey over Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit. Although if you wanted to call the Lions running back room better, I wouldn't argue you too much. That's a pretty talented group over there with Gibbs and David Montgomery. Assuming that this is the group, though, this does mean that the Niners would be cutting Jeff Wilson and Keyshawn Vaughn. I could see both of those guys ending up on the practice squad. Now, let's go to wide receiver, where I will only be keeping 5 players. And this one was very tricky, all right? I went with Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings, Russell Gage, Jordan Watkins, and Sky Moore. Now, obviously, Ayuk is probably going to stay on the PUP list to start the year. Demarcus Robinson will be suspended, so those guys are not going to count against the 53-man roster. But I do have Jacob Cowing missing this roster, probably on short-term IR thanks to that hamstring injury. Cowing has only had 2 practices since training camp started after being a standout in OTAs. And Kyle Shanahan said that Cowing could miss up to 6 weeks with a lingering hamstring injury. With Cowing missing, I think this really helps Sky Moore's chances. All the stuff that Shanahan let Cowing do last year is stuff that Sky Moore could do, including returning. The biggest question mark for me, in all honesty, is Jawan Jennings. What on earth is happening with Jawan? Why isn't he playing? Is it a calf issue that won't go away? Is it a money issue that won't go away? This is the type of story that the Niners dealt with last year. I would have thought that they'd left it in the past. It's really starting to sound like the Niners are fed up with Jawan, and I'm very concerned that he might miss week 1 or even be traded. Keep an eye out for that. On Saturday, Kyle Shanahan said he expects Jawan back for week 1, so we'll see. But I think out of all the positions on the team, wide receiver is the most likely to have an external addition after the cut-down date. Guys like Alan Lazard, Kendrick Bourne, Trey Palmer, Dontavion Wicks, all those guys could be cut on Tuesday, and I think the 49ers really should consider bringing one of them in. The other guys that have chosen to leave off the roster are Isaiah Hodgins, Robbie Chosen, Junior Bergen, Tariq Owen, and Malik Turner. Robbie Chosen and Malik Turner had great showings in the Chargers game. I hope at least one of them makes the practice squad, and I think Junior Bergen or Tariq Owens might make that practice squad as well. Now at tight end, this is the same as the last time I did this exercise, so I'll keep it nice and short. It's just going to be George Kittle, Luke Farrell, and Jake Tonjes, which means Braden Willis will be cut. I think Willis is going to probably end up on the practice squad. He's shown more in this camp than he ever has before. Good for Willis for continuing to develop. Tight end, though, is also a spot where I could see a free agent addition if the Niners aren't as confident in Jake Tonjes. There are some decent names who could be cut. Josh Wiley from Tennessee, UDFA Ben Urasek, or Davis Allen from the Rams. I could see the Niners finding a sneaky upgrade at that tight end 3 spot. We'll see, though. And for the offensive line, I'm going to break it down between offensive tackles and interior offensive line. For the tackles, I'm going to go with Trent Williams, Colton McKivitz, and Spencer Burford. Now, the big story here is that there's only 3. I cut Austin Pleasance. The reason I did that is because I think that there's a much higher chance that Pleasance makes it through waivers than another offensive lineman that I decided to keep. And it's not like Pleasance was very good anyways. He had a nice day against the Chargers, but I think there's a chance that an upgrade at right tackle could be cut from another team. I like the Chiefs UDFA Asa Poll quite a bit. Javon Foster in Jacksonville, another former draft crush of mine. And if the Bills can't fit their rookie tackle, Chase Lunt, on the roster, I think the Niners should certainly try and bring him in. Shout out to Lunt's college team, the UConn Huskies. Go Huskies. The tackles that I'm leaving out of this roster are Isaiah Prince and Isaac Alarcon. 2 pretty easy decisions to me. But it's certainly risky to go into the year with no backup at right tackle. On the interior of the offensive line, I'm keeping Ben Bartch, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Connor Colby, Matt Hennessy, and Drew Moss, which means I have cut Michael Dunn, Nick Zakel, and Drake Nugent. Pooney's injury situation could absolutely lead to him ending up on short-term IR, but from everything that I've heard, he's still got a chance to play in week 1, so I'm going to go ahead and put him on the team. Colby has played a bunch of left guard so far this summer, but he also got some run at right guard last week, which was his position at Iowa. He said that he's more comfortable at right guard, so I think that flexibility definitely means that he's making this team. And Matt Hennessy is just a better backup center than Nick Zakel or Drake Nugent, so I'm going to give him that backup spot. And I am keeping Drew Moss on the 53. I just think he's guaranteed to be claimed by someone if you waive him. I think it's much more likely that you can get Austin Pleasance on the practice squad and elevate him if you need. The O-line as a whole would be Trent Williams, Ben Bartch, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Colton McKivitz as the starters, and Spencer Burford, Connor Colby, Matt Hennessy, and Drew Moss as the backups. Time for the defense now, and we are starting with the defensive line and the edge rushers. I'm going to go with Nick Bosa, Bryce Huff, Michael Williams, Sam Aquanu, and Trevis Gibson. The Niners usually like to keep 5 edge rushers, and Gibson was great in the Raiders game. I think they're just being careful with Michael's knee, and they're going to bring him on the roster initially. And then Bosa, Huff, and Samo, I think those guys are pretty much locks to me. That does mean that Yetur Gross-Matos starts the year on the PUP list, which is something that John Lynch has said that has a chance to happen. Apparently, Gross-Matos has had some complications with his knee that's kept him out for a little longer than expected. Also, I'm leaving off Robert Beal, Jalen Allen, Jonathan Garvin, and William Bradley King, although I think at least one of those guys is going to end up on the practice squad. And with the defensive tackles, I'm keeping Jordan Elliott, Kalia Davis, CJ West, Alfred Collins, Sebastian Valdez, and Evan Anderson. This is a change from last time. Anderson does make the 53-man roster in my official prediction. With CJ West's knee injury keeping him out and Alfred Collins, taking some time to come along and produce a little better, the Niners need as many playable defensive tackles as they can possibly get, and Anderson is one of them. He had a nice showing in the Chargers game on Saturday. Now, of course, shout out to the Hulk, Sebastian Valdez, for making the team as a UDFA. Kevin Givens will almost certainly be a short-term IR candidate with his pec injury, and also missing out on the roster is Shaquille Brown and Bruce Hector. Hector, big number 60, he had a really nice preseason, and I would love to see him make the practice squad. He's a guy I'm pretty excited about. Now at linebacker, this was a really tough room to narrow down, the toughest. But I went with Fred Warner, D. Winters, Tatum Bethune, Luke Gifford, and Nick Martin for 5 spots. I so so badly wanted to include Curtis Robinson on this roster, but genuinely, I could not find the room for a sixth linebacker. I just couldn't. Maybe if some of the injuries at receiver or safety or defensive tackle weren't so serious, there would be room. But Curtis Robinson, I'm being so serious. He was the 54th man on this 53-man roster. He's definitely played well enough to earn a spot on this team. I just couldn't find the room for him, despite another really awesome summer. It would mean that we lose Robinson. I think if he's cut, he's going to another team. But I really hope that they can find a way to keep him either on the 53 or on the practice squad, because he's fantastic depth, both at special teams and on defense. He was competing with Tatum Bethune and Luke Gifford, and I think both of those guys also played really well this summer. I also left off of this roster Chaz Surratt, Jalen Graham, and Stone Blanton. Now at cornerback, I'm keeping 6 players: Diamador Lenore, Renardo Green, Upton Stout, Chase Lucas, Dallas Flowers, and Saron Neal. Chase Lucas makes this team as the backup nickel who can play some outside corner in a pinch if needed. He played outside in the Chargers game, and I think that's pretty notable. They want to test his flexibility like we saw with Connor Colby the past couple of weeks. I think that means that Lucas has a really good shot to make the roster. Dallas Flowers, though, will be the primary backup outside cornerback. He beats out Darrell Luter for that job, and he's had control of that position for most of training camp at this point. Saron Neal is a special teams ace, so he likely won't play much defense, but with Lucas and Flowers covering the backup cornerback spots, he's not going to have to. Now, unfortunately, undrafted free agent Jacob Robinson broke his forearm in the Chargers game, so I think he's a candidate for season-ending injured reserve, which is really a shame because I thought he showed some pretty good promise this summer. And of course, also being cut is Darrell Luter and Fabian Moreau. Now, I'm going to keep the 3 specialists, Jake Moody, Thomas Morstead, John Weeks, which means for safety, we have 4 spots left. And I'm going to go with Jason Pinnock, Marquise Siegel, Jair Brown, and Richie Grant. Now, Jair makes this version of my 53, but he is on thin ice. He's also a trade candidate, considering that his guy, Steve Wilks, is now with the Jets. But the big question mark to me in this room is Richie Grant. If he's healthy, I think he makes this team, but if he's not, I could easily see him ending up on IR or even just outright cut, in which case I think Jalen Mahoney would definitely make the team. Mahoney's had a really nice summer, and he's certainly pushing for a spot. I would not be surprised at all if he ends up on the team with either Grant or Brown missing out. But at this point, I'm not going to predict that. I'm going to predict that both Brown and Grant make the team. And so Jalen Mahoney, unfortunately, has to be cut. Also being cut is Derek Canteen, who played a little nickel corner, kind of a cool, flexible sort of skill set, but he's just all right, maybe a practice squad guy. And of course, Malik Mustafa will start the year on the PUP list before eventually making his return. So that is my final official 53-man roster prediction. Do you think guys like Jeff Wilson, Robbie Chosen, or Curtis Robinson, guys who I left off, do you think they're going to make this team? Let me know down below. Leave a comment, leave a like, and let me know if there's any topics that you'd like to see me cover. Thank you all for watching, and of course, subscribe for 49ers videos 5 days a week. We're getting close to the season now, and we got a lot more fun stuff to talk about, including some rivalry jerseys. As you can see, I'm wearing my all-black Navarro Bowman jersey as a bit of a teaser for that. I'm Brady Grustas, at Grustas Brady on X. This has been Niners Now, and I'll see you tomorrow.